Afternoon, dear viewers. Today, the 16th of March 2026, we present you with an overview of the situation along the line of contact. The front has noticeably intensified. Movement and territorial changes are being recorded on a number of sectors, both in favor of Russian forces and in favor of Ukrainian ones. With the arrival of spring, the front line has begun to stir after the winter lull. However, before moving directly to the analysis of the frontline situation, let us touch on the latest news. Over the past 24 hours, air defense assets intercepted approximately 600 unmanned aerial vehicles over the territory of the Russian Federation. Russian armed forces, in turn, struck a number of targets in Ukraine. In particular, strikes on Kyiv are reported, in which a drone manufacturing plant was destroyed. In addition, 17 consecutive impacts were recorded at a single point on the territory of Odessa. German-type strike drones were directed there. According to available information, the target of the attack was a classified cargo delivered as part of NATO military aid. The exact contents of this cargo have not been officially disclosed at this time. As is tradition, before we continue, I would like to sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription is a genuine contribution to the development and promotion of our content. If you have already watched our material on multiple occasions, but have not yet subscribed, please do so right now. I warmly thank everyone who has already supported the channel with their subscription. So then, dear friends, today's episode truly deserves special attention because there is one sector where a very significant advance has taken place. Moreover, this is the most large-scale advance for the entire month of March, and arguably one of the largest results for any individual sector throughout the current year. And this occurred in the area of responsibility of the East military grouping. Ukrainian media outlets have been actively claiming in recent days that this grouping had been successfully halted. Furthermore, just the day before, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made a statement claiming that Ukrainian armed forces had recaptured 434 square kilometers of territory, thereby disrupting the Russian army's offensive. However, a look at the current battlefield map paints an entirely different picture. One can, of course, speak of some slowdown in the pace of the East grouping's advance, roughly by half. But what disruption of the offensive are we actually talking about? And as for the figure of 434 square kilometers, a natural question arises. Does the president appreciate just how vast an area that is? For comparison, the entire mass of territory in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast under Russian army control amounts to 310 square kilometers. And even the most brazen Ukrainian media outlets do not allow themselves to claim that the entire Dnipropetrovsk Oblast was recaptured from the enemy. In reality, no genuine return of territory is taking place. The day before yesterday, Russian servicemen began clearing Huliaipole, a settlement that lay right on the line of contact at the very moment when Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces Rai-Oleksandrivka launched his offensive. In other words, even the positions that the Ukrainian side had fought so hard to recapture in February are already reverting to Russian control. Let us suppose that the Russian side truly is suppressing all information and that Ukrainian forces managed to bring the entire Dnipropetrovsk Oblast back under their control, even though not a single frame of objective confirmation of this has been presented. But even if we accept that version as truth, where do the remaining 125 square kilometers go, out of the claimed 434? After all, the only realistically confirmed area amounts to just 310 square kilometers. Yet Zelensky continues to state these figures with a straight face. At the same time, over the past month and a half, February and the first half of March, the Ukrainian side has lost more than 2,000 servicemen killed and hundreds of units of armored and other military equipment. Human life is being treated with complete disregard. The available footage clearly attests to this. In just one recording alone, more than 10 dead Ukrainian servicemen can be counted. It is not possible to show these images within the framework of this episode, however they have been published on the Telegram channel. The link is in the video description. And at this rate of losses in manpower and equipment, as seen in February and continuing now, including in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, as soon as the foliage appears and green cover spreads across the land, the position of the Ukrainian armed forces will deteriorate sharply. Please remember these words. But let us return to the Russian advance, or more precisely, to what can be described as a breakthrough. Russian forces managed to advance along a front more than 10 kilometers wide, with a maximum penetration depth exceeding 6 kilometers. The area of territory that has passed under Russian army control amounts to more than 30 square kilometers. As a result of this success, Russian units are now positioned just 1.5 to 2 kilometers from the eastern outskirts of Huliaipole. Recall that on the 1st of March, when analyzing the prospects for the current month, we noted that, given the active Ukrainian counterattacks to the north, the maximum achievable result for the Russian grouping by the end of March might be the capture of Huliaipole itself. At the same time, it was noted that such an outcome was unlikely, and that even reaching the city's outskirts would already constitute a very good result. Now, however, a real chance has emerged for the most favorable scenario to materialize. Not merely the Russian forces reaching the outskirts, but the possible capture of Huliaipole itself, or the conduct of fighting within the city, limits by the 1st of April. To reiterate, just 1.5 kilometers remain to the outskirts, and there are still 2 weeks left in March. The following is also noteworthy. Not long ago, fighting was taking place directly for Huliaipole itself, whereas today the line of contact has shifted more than 9 kilometers to the west. A mere 500 meters more, and that distance will exceed 10 kilometers. Thus, the front is retreating from the city at a very tangible pace. Despite Syrski's offensive, despite the forced redeployment of significant forces, including from this very sector. Another 2 to 3 months, and Huliaipole will become a deep rear-area city. Let us move on to the western Zaporizhzhia direction. From here come reports that Russian forces are expanding their zone of control and improving their tactical positions in the areas of the settlements of Primorska, Stepnohorsk, and Zaporizhzhia. As of today, there are no grounds to speak of Russian forces taking control of the settlements of Veselyanka and Richna. They apparently remain under Ukrainian armed forces control. For a prolonged period, no confirmed information has been received regarding active assault operations or strikes in the direction of Rai-Oleksandrivka. At the same time, Ukrainian counterattacks from the direction of Kostantinovka toward Primorsk are being recorded. Based on the totality of available data, it can be concluded that Richny and Veselyanka are either under Ukrainian forces' control or remain in a grey zone without confident Russian army control. As for the Orikhiv direction, activity by small assault groups is being recorded here. However, no territorial changes in either direction are being noted. Russian forces continue to deliver fire strikes against Ukrainian armed forces positions in Novoandrivka, Novodanilivka, Malotokmachka, and Orikhiv itself. Previously, footage from the Novoandrivka area recorded a Russian advance of approximately 2 kilometers and their consolidation on the southern outskirts of the settlement. However, this success could not be built upon, and no subsequent confirming material was received, leading to the assumption that Russian forces either failed to hold their gained positions or that the southern part of Novoandrivka remains contested territory. The map on this direction remains unchanged. Let us move on to the Pokrovsk direction. Here, confirming video material has been received from the settlement of Hryshin, and reports are also coming in from north of Udakny. Russian forces are expanding their zone of control north of Udakny and advancing along the supply road in the direction of Serhivka. Previously received footage recorded the forward positions of Russian units at several points in this area. The entire territory marked in grey is under Russian military control. However, the reliability of this control remains unclear due to the possibility of Ukrainian counterattacks. Therefore, this territory has not yet been colored in the primary color on the map. Regarding Hryshin, Russian forces are expanding their zone of control within this settlement. According to data available at the time of recording, a clearing operation is underway in the northwestern part of Hryshin. The day before, footage was received showing Russian servicemen on motorcycles advancing to the northern outskirts, after which they came under attack from Ukrainian kamikaze drones. The Ukrainian side attempted to clear the buildings where Russian fighters had dug in. However, the recording cuts off at the moment when a Russian serviceman is inside a building. The outcome of this episode remains unknown. The entire territory marked on the map continues to be attributed to the Russian army. The reports received at the time of recording about the continued clearing of the northwestern section indicate that Russian control over this area is being maintained. Corrections will be made upon receipt of new confirmed data. Let us move on to the Dobropillya direction. Here, assault operations are continuing in the area of the mine complex west of Rodinske. Fighting for this facility has been ongoing for some time, at least several days, possibly around a week. Forward Russian positions were previously recorded directly adjacent to the mine, and before that, at a point 1.5 kilometers to the east. The assault continues, and no territorial changes have yet been recorded. It is anticipated that confirming material will arrive once the facility has fully passed under Russian forces' control. In parallel, assault operations are continuing in Belitska. Available footage confirms the presence of Russian forces at a number of points. All territory marked in grey is under Russian army control, and some sources report an expansion of the zone of control within this settlement. Kamikaze drones are being actively employed all along the line of contact, and the front remains tense. Let us move on to the Kostantinovka direction. Reports are coming in of active fighting in the area of Huliaipole. According to available information, Russian forces are attempting to expand their zone of control, and combat operations are being conducted on the territory between Huliaipole and Kostantinovka itself. However, no confirmed territorial changes have been recorded at this time. Advance was previously noted in the area of Stepanivka. Russian forces were pressing in the direction of Dobropillya and expanding their zone of control toward Huliaipole. A number of sources reported the seizure of certain buildings on this sector by Russian forces, however confirming material never materialized. The map on the Kostantinovka direction remains unchanged. Let us move on to the Sloviansk direction. Today, from this direction as well, the reports are predominantly news items rather than confirmed changes. The focus is on Huliaipole, Nikiforivka, and Kriva Luka. Regarding Huliaipole, material was previously received confirming confident control over Minkivka and the presence of Russian forces in the central part of Huliaipole. Information also came in about the complete transition of Huliaipole and Privilya under Russian army control. Today, reports are coming in of an expansion of the zone of control in the vicinity of Huliaipole. Russian forces are advancing from the central part in the direction of the nearest forest tract. Pro-Ukrainian sources, meanwhile, report Ukrainian counterattacks and attempts to push Russian forces back in the Huliaipole area. Since this information is unconfirmed, no changes are being made to the map. An analogous situation is developing in the areas of Fedorivka Druha and Nikiforivka. Active fighting without recorded territorial changes at the time of recording. Regarding Kriva Luka, a number of sources report a significant expansion of the Russian zone of control and the commencement of assault operations directly within the settlement. The last confirmed advance was recorded on the adjacent sector of the line of contact. Previously, footage was also received showing active drone and artillery strikes on Kalaniki and Kriva Luka. Based on the accumulating data, it cannot be ruled out that in the near future, confirmation will arrive of Kriva Luka's complete transition under Russian control. Let us move on to the Kreminna direction. Here, both news and actual map changes are being recorded. We will begin with the southern sector. South of Lyman, an expansion of the Russian zone of control has been recorded in the forest tracts. This sector has fully passed under Russian army control. Forces are advancing in a direction that allows them to gradually encircle Lyman in a semi-encirclement, with the prospect of closing the encirclement ring. Simultaneously, Russian forces are expanding their presence in the eastern part of Lyman itself, and also made attempts to approach the city from the north. Corresponding footage from forward positions was received. In addition, Russian forces are expanding their zone of control in the area of Dobropillya. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation officially announced the complete transition of Dobropillya under Russian control. However, no independent confirming footage from this sector has yet been received. In the area of Sosnov, an expansion of the zone of control to the south of the settlement has been recorded. The corresponding sector is marked as having passed under Russian army control. Reports are also coming in of a Russian advance through the forest tracts between Sosnov and Rai-Oleksandrivka in the direction of the latter. Russian forces have not yet managed to take Oleksandrivka, despite earlier records of their consolidation on the outskirts of this settlement. The offensive in this direction has not received further development. Over the past 24 hours, the Russian army has increased the area of territory under its control by 31 square kilometers. Accordingly, Ukraine has lost 31 square kilometers over the same period. That concludes today's overview of the frontline situation.